Next, loops, doing something repeatedly. Java has 4 main types of loops. We'll give details in the next few slides, but let's summarize them briefly now. Perhaps the most common type of loop in Java is the for each loop, where a variable is set to each entry in a collection. An array is a kind of collection in turn. Perhaps the second most common type of loop in Java is the for loop that has 3 pieces: an initialization, a test whether you should continue, and some operation to update a variable. The third type of loop, which is used less frequently, is a while loop. While some condition is true, keep going. And the fourth and by far least frequent type of loop is a do loop. Let's look at each of these. So the for each loop takes a variable that you make up. So I make up a variable called entry, and its type is string. The thing on the right of the colon is a collection, and for now the only kind of collection we know about is an array, that exists already. So entries is an array of strings. So entry, the variable name I just made up, should be an individual string. The type of the variable you make up matches the individual entries inside the collection. So if you pass in an array of ints, your variable should be of type int. If you pass an array of doubles, your variable should be of type double, and so forth. So entry, the variable name I made up, becomes the first thing inside the existing collection, entries. It does the body of the loop. In this case, it prints it out. Then entry, the variable name I made up, becomes the second in the collection. It does the body of the loop, and so forth. So let's try it out in action. Suppose we pass in, this is a test. So I take that array, I pass it in, and that array becomes the value of entries. And so now entry, the variable name I made up, the first time around the loop it's this, the second time around the loop it's is, the third time around the loop is and the last time around the loop it's test. So if I run that method and I pass it the array, then the output I get is this is a test, each on a separate line. The second kind of loop in Java, which is a little bit complicated but is very familiar because it's widely used in other languages. C, C++, JavaScript, C#, and several other languages have the same kind of loop. First, you make up a variable and you give it an initial value. This says, I have a variable called I. I is a whole number, int, and its initial value is 0. The second thing is a test. The test is queried before you execute the loop. So is I less than max? Well, I don't know what max is. I'm going to supply that later. But the loop is executed only if I, which starts out at 0, is less than max. And then the third thing is an update operation. Plus plus means add 1 to. So this means start I at 0, execute the loop only if I is less than whatever value I'm going to pass in, and then after I execute the loop, add 1 to I. So I is going to start at 0, and the next time it's going to be 1, the next time it's going to be 2, and so forth. So suppose I call this method and I pass in 4. So I starts at 0, and the first thing it does, it says, is 0 less than 4? Yes, it is. So it executes the body of the loop, and it prints out number 0. Then it adds 1 to I, that's what the I++ means, and then it does the test again. Is 1 less than 4? Yes, it is. So it executes the body of the loop, prints out 1. Adds 1 to I, so I is now 2. Is 2 less than 4? Yes. Executes it. Does it again. Is 3 less than 4? Yes. It adds 1 to it. I is now 4. Is 4 less than 4? No. So it stops. So it prints it out 4 times. A while loop tests a condition. As long as this condition is true, keep executing the loop. A while loop is used less frequently for a fixed number of loop iterations. It's used more commonly when you're reading from an array or you're reading from a socket and you're not sure how long the condition will be true. But in this case, I keep adding 1 to I, and while I is still less than max, which I'm going to supply as 5, keep executing. And so in this case, I more or less reproduce the behavior of the previous loop. Again, if you're going to loop for a fixed number of times, it's much more common to use the previous loop, where you kind of explicitly in the declaration of the loop say where the variable starts, what the test is, and what the update operation is. Finally, you can have do loops, and do loops are more or less the same as while loops, except that the test is done at the end instead of the beginning. Do loops are quite rare, and I would say that if you never learned a do loop in your life as a Java programmer, you probably would not consider it a great loss.